Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. I am Menners. This is the longest running cricket podcast in Australia, and I've got a special guest from the second longest running cricket podcast in Australia, Can't Bowl, Can't Throw. He's also an accomplished author, Dan Liebke. Dan, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm really good, Menners. Glad to be here.
Great to have
I'll never
you.
catch you, but I like to just be just on your tail all the time in terms of longest podcast.
Exactly. Well, yeah, you're never going to be able to catch me, indeed. And returning is freelance cricket writer Jono Baruch. Jono, welcome.
Menners, great to be here again. Dan, lovely to see you, mate. Let's get into it.
Indeed, we've got lots of cricket news to talk about, tons of stuff. So let's start with the cricket headlines. And we're going to start with women's cricket to kick things off for this edition. So I mentioned briefly on my mini pod that I released earlier this week that Australia has a new captain. Alyssa Healy is now permanent Australian captain, and Talia McGrath is her vice captain. Dan, I'll start with you. What do you think of this appointment?
I think it was pretty predictable, wasn't it? I mean, she led Australia in the Ashes. She did fine there. She did as well as Pat Cummins did in the men's Ashes, retained them. And I think it probably would have been a little bit rough to throw a newbie in for an India tour. We don't really know what's going to happen test-wise over in India. It's been a long time, I think, since Australia's played a test in India. So, yeah, give Alyssa Healy a little bit longer in the job, and, yeah, she can hang around for a bit and until she's done, then someone else could take over. Probably Talia McGrath by the look of things.
Yeah, I think so. You're right. Jono, what do you think?
I agree with Dan. I think it was an easy decision, just one that they simply had to ratify. Elise had done it before. She went to do the Ashes in place of Meg Lanning, came home with the Ashes, so big tick there. She won the series against the West Indies, incumbent for the role. And as Dan said, it's probably the best person for the job, particularly going into such a big series. Talia McGrath's her vice captain, so she's definitely the next captain in line. I would have liked them to maybe put some planks in place for the future, maybe promote an Ash Gardner to a leadership, like an official leadership position, seeing that she is seen widely as a captain in waiting. So I would have liked to see that, but overall, I've got no real problems with it. Elisa will do it for a few years, and then Talia will probably end up taking over. It's a good leadership combination. Talia's just won 2 women's big bashes in a row, leading the Adelaide Strikers, so she knows what she's doing, and Elisa's learnt from the best and been vice captain for a while, so just a natural transition.
Yes, Cricket Australia have tended to make very safe appointments recently, and I think this fits that category. That, as you say, John, if they wanted to take a risk, maybe you make Talia or Ash the skipper, and you keep Elisa there as vice captain and someone who can kind of guide that new person. But this is a good appointment. I still have concerns about wicket keepers as captains, wicket keepers and fast bowlers. I don't know if it always works out. And playing devil's advocate, Australia didn't win the series in England, so maybe the jury is still out on Elisa's white ball captaincy. Anyway, we'll see. Let's see. Right, moving on. Next bit of news. The Women's Premier League has had its latest auction, and there's a few cashed up Aussie women's cricketers. So Annabelle Sutherland made a lazy 360,000 Aussie dollars to go to the Delhi Capitals. Phoebe Litchfield, friend of the show, was paid $182,000 to go to Gujarat. Lauren Cheadle from the Sixers will be joining her for $55,000. And Royal Challengers Bangalore have signed Georgia Wareham and Sophie Molyneux for $70,000 and $55,000 respectively. Great additions to the WPL, and I'm really glad to see Phoebe Litchfield get a contract, because I think it's going to do wonders for her game. She needs that experience. She needs all the big time cricket she could get. Dan, what did you think of the WPL, and what do you think about these results?
Well, I think expectations around the Sutherland Christmas tree have gone way up. Will's going to be annoyed if he gets a $50 JB Hi-Fi voucher. I think, it's it's great to see the women getting all their due. As you say, Phoebe Litchfield, I mean, she's a gun. She's going to be amazing. and get as much cricket into her as possible. She's already like a genius at just scoring quickly. Get her over there in the short form and hone her skills.
She had a very quiet end to the WBBL, so I thought that might cool things off in the WPL auction. But her performances recently for Australia, I think, caught the eye of the people with the paddle from Gujarat who were putting in the bids. Did you like it, Jono?
Yeah, it's great. I'm just back on Will Sutherland. I think a lot of people were disappointed the other night in Geelong with the whole pitch fiasco, which I'm sure we'll get into. But Will Sutherland was bowling beautifully, and he was thinking, if I can just get a few more balls to just hoop around and go absolutely nuts here, maybe it'll increase my chances of catching Annabelle some way. But not to be. No, it's great news.
You'd have got wickets on that pitch, Jono, mate.
Oh, anyone would have gotten wickets on that pitch. It's it was absolutely flying everywhere, flying around corners. But no, great stories. Great for Annabelle, great for Phoebe Litchfield. And the last pick of the night, Sophie Molyneux as well, had an absolute wretched run over the last 18 months or so, pretty much ever since she fell out of that Australian side. Hasn't really had a good run, but it's great to see her get picked up at the end and hopefully get her cricketing career back on track for Victoria in a couple of weeks, and then over in the WPL and hopefully build back into that Australian team where she's had a glittering career so far, winning World Cups and being part of Ashes series. It's just a matter of time for her to get back into it.
Yeah, the only surprise for me was that Amanda Jade Wellington didn't get picked up after her performances consistently for the Adelaide Strikers. I thought she might get a bit of a contract somewhere. So that was my only surprise.
There's been a bit of a trend in that in the IPL as well, where overseas spinners are less likely to be picked up just because India have so many spinners of their own that I think it's really hard to make ground. But I was very surprised that of all the spinners, I thought she would have got a run there because she was great in the final. I mean, she's great all year, but particularly in the final.
Yeah, I think the bigger fuss was no room for Chamari Adapadu, player of the tournament in the WBBL and couldn't find a home. It was absolutely ridiculous. And you're talking about players that can do everything. Amanda Jade Wellington, gun spin bowler, can close out a game from anywhere, can bosh it off the bat if she has to. But Chamari does it with the bat. She can do it with the ball. Just what do they have to do?
Maybe it's because she can't run between the wickets was the thing that handicapped her there. Anyway, all right, moving on from the WPL auction. I actually haven't recorded a panel show since the WBBL final. And, I paid such close attention to the tournament. I don't want to just gloss over it. It was back-to-back wins for the Adelaide Strikers. And my analysis of the game is that the Brisbane Heat turned up with a loser's attitude and they got what they deserved. I heard some of their players talking in the lead up to the game about, will Adelaide serve up a good batting pitch because they, the Adelaide Strikers like to defend, so they're probably going to serve up a slow pitch to bring their spinners into it. And so already before a ball has been bowled, the Heat were whinging and complaining. And if you take that attitude into a final, you are not going to win. So the Adelaide Strikers batted first and made 125 with a top score of 39 by friend of the show, Laura Vulvart. And then they were able to defend that. A phenomenal performance by the Strikers. They kept the Heat to just 122. It was a thrilling match, a great finish. Amanda Jade Wellington, player of the match, 4 overs, 3 for 16. Talia McGrath, 2 overs for 16. Megan Shute, as ever, took a couple of wickets, 4 overs, 2 for 30. Darcy Brown, 4 overs, none for 20. It was just a superb bowling performance by the Strikers. And, I just think that the Heat actually cost themselves a real chance by going in with a poor attitude.
They were only one decent hit away from winning the thing. You're a bit harsh, I think. But there was a catch on the the catch on the boundary that another couple of meters and it was 6 and they win the tournament. You're very hard.
Oh, they choked though. It was a massive choke job. Look at their batting lineup: Grace Harris, Georgia Redmayne, Amelia Kerr, Mignon Dupree, Laura Harris, who got out first ball, and she was the player I heard whinging, so it really got to her. Charlie Knott, Jess Johnson.
You're allowed to get a good ball.
They should have mowed that target down, but they got stuck. They let the conditions get into their head, and in the end, the Strikers are back-to-back champions, and it was done at the Adelaide Oval, which was fantastic. And congratulations to them. You're not happy, Jono, with that analysis, are you?
I just think it's funny. Like, they were one hit away from potentially winning the title, and I agree.
Imagine if they'd gone in with a good attitude.
I agree.
I agree.
They would have absolutely shattered in. I agree with what you're saying. It's like, you don't play the ground, you play the team. But they bowled well. They were well on their way. And then Talia McGrath did what she did and made that incision, got the massive wickets of, I think it was Kerr and Laura Harris in consecutive balls to really swing the game back. And as I was saying, they could have won in the last over. Like, it was just put it down to good bowling.
Yes, it was a good performance by the Strikers, poor attitude by the Heat. It was Mignon Dupree and Laura Harrison, consecutive deliveries by Talia McGrath. Also, don't want to forget Gemma Barsby, 3 overs, 1 for 15 for the Strikers. Great
my favourite ambidextrous cricketer, Gemma Barsby.
Well, there's one more, isn't there, who plays in Australia. So anyway, moving on. So that's the WBBL for this year. Overall, I think you and I discussed it last time we got together, Jono, that it was a good tournament, overshadowed slightly by the World Cup. But Dan, what would you give this WBBL if you were giving like lesser grades? What would you give it?
It is hard. It is hard. It definitely was overshadowed by the World Cup, which is sad. The WBBL always seems to be overshadowed by something, which is annoying. I actually had a theory that maybe the WBBL should go into the January slot and bring the men's BBL back to this slot. Because the men's BBL now is in competition with this South African one and all these other tournaments that are taking place. Bring them forward, put the women in there, and really make a go of it over January. But I don't know, give it a B-. It's fine. WBB minus.
Jono, what do you give it?
Yeah, I think I'm around the same. I think I'm around a B. Like, it was a good tournament, overshadowed, emergence of some other great young talent, which is what you want. But it's also kind of just giving it, like, I think we discussed it last time, it's really just a race between 3 teams mainly. Like, the 2 Melbourne teams have been irrelevant for a number of years now, unfortunately, and there's a couple of other teams that are just sort of floating in and around, and it's really just between the Strikers, the Scorchers, the Brisbane Heat, and sometimes the Sydney Sixers. So it's really 4-team comp. The Thunder fell off the perch, so you gotta be able to spread the talent around a little bit more. Whether it's fixing the draft, which I thought was actually a nice little thing that they did, but people got around it as well. The Scorchers going behind back and signing Nat Brunt. It's a little bit of shenanigans there. So there are ways that it can be better. I don't think moving it is a good idea, considering they moved it once to try give the women clean air. But the cricket calendar is just one of those things that's a bit too crowded. So, I mean, because Laura Woolvart was playing the WBBL final, she missed her official captaincy debut for South Africa. So there's always cricket.
Well, that's priorities. That's good priorities. I appreciate that. She's the rare player that's actually playing the WBBL ahead of national duties. I think a couple of things. My thoughts around this WBBL is we didn't quite have the sort of star performances from the big players. Grace Harris came out of the blocks with that big 100, but then Alyssa Healy getting ruled out of the tournament by her own dogs, and I just don't think the big players really, even the overseas, apart from Chamari Atapatu, even Harmanpreet Kaur, like Hayley Matthews, they all had quiet WBBLs. So I think that's kind of what it was missing, was those big players performing. And Dan, you're talking about moving the tournament. I guess now that the fact that the Big Bash is getting earlier, maybe you could get to a stage where the Big Bash is ending that 20th of January, and then the WBBL sort of starts then and goes sort of end of January through February. Maybe there'd be clearer air there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked too deeply into it. I just
Well, why'd you
feel
bring it
that,
up then? This isn't cup old can't throw.
because I had to say something.
All right.
You can
So
go
that is
anywhere.
it
It's
for
not in BBL. Put it somewhere.
That's it. That's it. So that is it for the women's cricket news. Let's move on to the men's summer because it's the build up now to the first test against Pakistan that starts at Thursday at the Wacker. I almost said, but it's actually at Optus Stadium. It's called the West Test. I think you are legally obliged to call it the West Test moving forward. I still want to call it the Western Test. I'm really going to stick to this one. I'd like cowboy hats, all that kind of thing. I think it should be Western themed. But anyway, am I right in saying that it feels like there's not a lot of massive storylines for this Australian team that, apart from David Warner, and that's just been ongoing for the last 3 years, the storylines are pretty limited. The Australian team's very solid. I guess Alex Carey, for me, who has to watch out because I think Inglis is breathing down his neck, and obviously Nathan Lyon's on the verge of 500 wickets. But Jono, you'd have to say it's a pretty low-key build up to the test.
I think Andrew McDonald sucked the life out of it the other day, where he effectively declared the team. He said Warner's going to be opening the batting, and Mitch Marsh is going to be batting 6, and there'll be no debut for Lance Morris. So it kind of just sucked the life out of the whole selection battle heading into the test. But no, as you said, it's a very settled Australian team. I'll get your thoughts on this, Dan and Menners, in a second, about what McDonald said about the World Test Championship and how they're putting a premium on every game and not taking the opportunities to maybe blood some new players like a Morris, or using the advantage that they have this summer. Because as I think everyone said, it's a Group 2 summer in terms of the teams that are coming out here. No disrespect to the opposition, of course, but I think because it's such a settled unit, there are not that many massive storylines. Like the person making the most noise about this Australian cricket team at the moment is Mitchell Johnson, and has been retired for about 5 or 6 years. It's that kind of summer, I think, and I think that's really what we're going to get. That's why it's been pretty low key from the outset, and will just continue to be pretty low key moving forward.
What do you think, Dan? What excites you?
What excites me? What excites me is I don't know, the prospect that I can watch Test cricket again. It feels like forever since the Ashes. So yeah, I'm just excited that it's actually going to be on, and I can sit down for 5 days or however long Pakistan last and watch some cricket. And it's a great time slot for those of us over here in the East. It's beautiful.
Do you think Alex Carey will survive the summer, Dan?
Yeah.
Yep. You do?
No doubt in my mind. I think Alex Carey will be fine. I think everybody who starts this Test series, David Warner, I just don't think Pakistan or the West Indies will put enough pressure on any of the incumbent players for them to have such a bad run of form that they're out. So I think they're fine. I think they'll all everybody who's in will be fine. I think Cameron Green will struggle to get back in, at least until Warner says I'm out of here after Sydney. And then he's got a chance, because I think they'll try and shuffle around the batting order somehow so he's in. I don't know who will open, but somebody in that top 6 will open.
I agree. Travis Head said about Alex Carey that the Stuart Broad's sledge directed at Alex Carey won't go down well when Carey retires. Broad said that's all you'll be remembered for to Carey. And Carey's spoken about the incident in the lead up to this test match, and he said it's not affecting him too much. Of course he's going to say that. It's hard to tell. Whose dog's barking? Is that yours, Jono?
Oh, probably. They bark at anything that walks past the front door.
That's right. So with I'm going to mute you for a sec. So with Head's comments, though, I did like Stuart Broad saying that he just said all that stuff to just wind the Aussies up, to try and put them off their game. I mean, he's kind of the master sort of magician, Broad. He knows how to fuck with us.
Yeah, I mean that's Stuart Broad all over. I mean, if he's not winding teams up, what's the point of him? Like the whole purpose of Stuart Broad is to be a troll. Like he doesn't do it on social media. He does it out on the cricket field. He's magnificent at it. That's why I love him so much. So yeah, he obviously just said that to wind Alex Carey up, but and it's kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So no matter Carey could like average 60 and take 600 catches, and even then people are going to say, well, Stuart Broad was wrong. This isn't all he's going to be remembered for, but like that's going to be still part of the definition of him. So it's perfect. Stuart Broad's outmaneuvered everybody yet again.
I can't wait for Stuart Broad to sort of take up the role as like as the heel commentator when he moves into it full time. But
him and Johnson just sitting in the commentary box taking pot shots at people.
Yeah, they'll be kind of funny. I think there's one network that they'll be looking forward to signing them both up.
Just Jono, on what you said before about Andrew McDonald saying that because of the World Test Championship, the onus is not really on building the team or blooding players. I think the situations are different. I think obviously the Warner situation is its own beast, and that's just he just looms large over this whole selection, and I think that he's just going to make it to Sydney, whether you think they could be blooding another opener or not. And he does partner well with Kawaja. It's inarguable that they've formed a good partnership. I mean, Kawaja scored most of the runs in that, but still, it's been a good partnership. In the other sense, though, with the bowlers, I just think it's not so much about blooding people. Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins don't want to miss test matches now. That's just it. They have made it very clear that they're close. Well, especially Stark and Hazelwood, they're probably close to the end and the beginning. They don't want to be rested. They don't want to be rotated. If they're fit, they want to play. And I think they've earned that right to be picked every time they're available. So I don't have a problem with it. Just on some other news, Nathan Lyon spoke to the media yesterday and said he'll say hi to Mitch Johnson if he runs into him at the Optus Stadium in the lead up to the first test. I don't think Lyon was ever going to say anything else to the press. Who knows what he'll say to Johnson behind closed doors. All right, so we're going to take our first break and then we'll be back to look at the Pakistan team. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. Welcome back. I'm Menas. I'm with Jono and Dan Liebke. Now, Dan, you've written a fantastic book, The 100 Funniest Moments in Australian Cricket. And I want to get to some of the details of that soon. But when you talk about funny cricket teams, Pakistan, you could definitely do a book on them, couldn't you?
Oh, I mean, Pakistan have been masters at it for decades. As long as I can remember, Pakistan have been out there doing absurd things. And it's become almost cliched how absurd they are, but they keep doing it. They stick to their guns and they just roll along. And we love them for it. I mean, that's Pakistan cricket. That's why I think they must be everybody's second favorite team, surely. They're just so entertaining.
You never know what you're going to get. But in Australia, look, they've had a very bad run here. I think they've lost their last 14 tests here. They haven't won a test since the mid-90s. They've only ever won 4 test matches in Australia. They've never won a test series here. So it's hard to see them doing anything. But, Jono, I think there's an element that the Australian team could get a little bit of a shock in that Pakistan, don't think will win, but I think they'll battle hard.
I think they'll battle hard in the sense that their top 5 batters are class and they've seen someone exposed form. They've seen what they know what Babar Azam can do. Shah Masood, he made a double 100 on slowest wicket in the world in Canberra and against Australia's next in line bowling attack. But he's shown himself to be a class player. Abdullah Shafiq up the top, and they rotate between Imam ul Haq and Sal Shakil as well as one of the most improved cricketers in the world over the past 12 months. But I think that's probably going to be where it ends for Pakistan in terms of their resistance. Like you look at their bowling, aside from Shaheen and maybe Muhammad Wasim Jr., there's not much pump there. And particularly now with Abra Ahmed going to miss the first test, and we've got 37-year-old Numan Ali, who hasn't played many tests outside of Pakistan where it spins and explodes. Think he might be in for an absolute rough trot. So I think they'll surprise a little bit when it comes to the resistance with the batting, and Australia will have to bowl well until they get them maybe 4 or 5 down. But up until then, if you can't make runs this summer and you're an Australian batter, then there might be some conversations.
Yeah, I think Shaheen Sharafredi could rattle a few early, but you're right. It's going to be an uphill battle for them. Babar Azam coming off being dumped as captain. He's a player to watch. He might have a little bit of fire in the belly. But looking at that top 6 of Shafiq, Al-Haq, Masood, Azam, and Shakil, they could be formidable. But I think it'll be like that tour, maybe not the last tour, but the tour before that. Pakistan came and they kind of were a bit plucky, but in the end, Australia just overtook them in the test matches. They just can't.
Was
stay
that the
with
one where
us.
they tried to chase 500 at Brisbane or something and almost
Yes,
got
it was
there?
it was like
Yes,
almost 4-9. Yeah, it was incredible. They were only 30 or 40 short in the end. So yeah, I just think the Australian public is expecting Pakistan to just roll over, and Australia's just going to just steamroll them, and it's going to be a celebration of World Test champions and World Cup winners. But I just have a feeling maybe we're underestimating that they could actually be quite competitive. And maybe it's just me hoping we get a competitive Test series because it's rare to get one in Australia. So let's see. Muhammad Hafiz, who's part of the staff, was complaining to the media about the slow pitch that was wheeled out for Pakistan in Canberra. And I get his comments, but I think that's pretty standard around the world now that these practice games are played on pitches completely the opposite of what the first test will be. I think it's a bit rich of Pakistan to complain about that. Where I do think they have a legitimate complaint, though, is the fact that the last day of the game was called off because the covers blew off. Now, if Australia was touring any other country, we would be kicking up a fuss about that. I mean, Dan, that was just not acceptable.
Yeah, no. I mean, not just the slowest pitch, the worst covered pitch as well. It's ridiculous. You
second worst covered pitch. I think the worst covered pitch is.
Sorry,
I think the worst covered pitch we're getting to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, There's plenty of contenders for that nomination, but yeah, it was. I mean, it is ridiculous that that you could show up on the morning of it had first class status, right? It's a proper
absolutely
proper match.
It's played a test. I've been to a test match there.
We just forgot to cover it properly, and
we just didn't pin it down. That's all right, guys. Go home.
Yeah, it was very MCA Sunday areas with the covers blowing off in the middle of the night, and the waters damaged the pitch. Yeah,
it was terrible. Just on the Australian performances in that game, you mentioned. For Pakistan, Shah Masood made 201 not out. For Australia, Jordan Buckingham took 5 for 80, continues his good start to the summer. And with the bat for the PM's 11, it was a tale of a lot of middling scores apart from Matt Renshaw. Cameron Bancroft, 53 off 128 balls. That is going to do nothing for his test selection. Boring to watch, not dominating at all. So I think that's a tough one. Marcus Harris, 49, 102 balls. Again, middling score. Matt Renshaw, though, 136 not out of 337 balls. Wow, he really dug in. Cameron Green made 46. Nathan McSweeney, 40. Bo Webster was 21 not out. Felt to me that all of the PM's 11 batters were a bit scared to take the game on. Like they didn't want to fail almost.
Yeah, I mean they're clearly not going to get roped into baseball anytime soon, are they? They're all just slugging along there.
Oh yeah, Bangkok would never ever get picked for England. No, definitely no baseball for them. All right, so that's anything else you two want to touch on before the first test? I mean, I guess Dan, predictions from the series. What are you thinking? 3-0 Australia?
It would seem difficult. I mean, it's probably going to rain the entire test in Sydney, right? So we'll say 2-0.
Like it. Yeah. I don't mind the sledge against Sydney. Jono, what are you picking?
I can't see Pakistan. I can see them being competitive, but I think when it comes to the crunch, Australia should be too good. And despite Sydney doing its best efforts to maybe try save Pakistan of a 3-0 whitewash, I think Australia should be too good and get it done 3-0.
I agree. 3-0 Australia. It's going to be carnage. What about Australian performances? I think Steve Smith's due a big summer. He's been a bit quiet. I think he might try and feast on the Pakistan attack. Do you think David Warner will go out on top? Do you think he's going to have a big series, Dan?
Oh, he's always much better at home, isn't he? I think he'll have a decent series. He'll finish it off with something spectacular. I'm pretty sure he'll get a century somewhere. I think Steve Smith's in for a weird summer. I watched him bat for the Sixers the other night, and I just got the vibe that Smith's going to pull out something really strange and unusual this summer. Not quite sure what it is. That's what makes it exciting. But he'll do something stupid or brilliant or both.
My two predictions for the summer, and one's for this series and one's for the next series. So I've noticed something every single time I've gone to the Adelaide Oval, that if you hit a double ton, you get a statue. So I think Travis Head's going to have a statue at Adelaide Oval by the end of the summer. I also think
I want the statue to be of him taking the catch off Rohit Sharma in the World Cup. As I said,
and I want the statue to look
build
like
him a bloody statue.
I want the statue to look like Rohit's. I want the statue to have Rohit's face when he's like, shit, how on earth did he catch that? But no, and I think David Warner will score. I'll use a term from the third best cricket podcast in Australia, The Grade Cricketer, FU Ton, which Warner scored last year on Boxing Day in his 100th test, and I think he's got another one in his farewell test, just to say, like, this is what you guys are going to be leaving.
Yeah.
It's another fine for you, Jono. When you bring up the grade cricketers, it's another fine. AFL as well as a fine. Anyway, I'll invoice you. Oh. You can only bring up the grade cricketers if you're sledging them, like for their stupid jokes about their dads hating them or something. Anyway, like those predictions, I agree. I think that'll happen. Another bit of news. This sort of borders on funniest moments in Australian cricket. Michael Clarke is back commentating. Now, News Corp made a big song and dance about this. Michael Clarke is back. He's not actually commentating. He's working for ESPN Crick Info, doing a show over summer hosted by Nerily Meadows, and it's going to have other cricketers on it, and it's going to be on ESPN and ESPN Crick Info's digital website. But the pariah of Australian cricket, who after Channel 9 lost the rights, hasn't got a job commentating anywhere. Pup is back. I don't mind his analysis. I actually think he's quite a good analyst. But what do you think, Dan?
When I saw the headline, Clarke's back, I thought it was going to be the latest injury that he suffered. But he's back in
some incident at Noosa.
I think. He's Michael Clarke. He's fine. Get him on there. I mean, he's better than Hayden. I mean, that's a low bar, but I'd rather have Michael Clarke commentating than Matthew Hayden.
I think every World Cup match you put out at least 3 tweets how much you hated Hayden's commentary.
God, he drove me mad.
With that being said, I think there's a reason why Michael Clarke hadn't been able to get a commentary job in Australia once the Channel 9 deal wound up.
Well, I think it's more about the personalities in the other networks that don't want to work with him rather than his ability to commentate. Because I do actually think Michael Clarke's analysis and broadcasting is pretty solid. And when you look at some of the people in the commentary boxes for both Fox and Seven, Clarke is on par with them in terms of that. Yeah. But maybe he's not on par with them in terms of being part of the boys' club.
It's probably the leader of the boys' club. That's probably why no one really wanted him.
Dan, just tell me what annoys you so much about Hayden's commentary. Just give me a few bugbears.
I don't even know where to begin. It's just the fact he starts a sentence and then he ends with a completely different sentence. I can't claim credit for that analysis. That was that's from Alex Bowden. But yeah, he doesn't talk like a proper person. Everything's all about Aussie greatness and Aussie, the pride in the Aussie baggy green, and like that's not why they're winning games. They're winning games because they're batting and bowling better. Like it just drives me mad. I can't even I don't want to think too hard about it, Manners. I just know that every time I hear him talk, it's just like, shut up, shut up, shut up. You annoy me.
And,
You're a terrible man.
and do you mute him when he comes on?
No, I'm a glutton for punishment. I leave him on just to see what horrific things he's going to come up with. Sometimes he's wearing a stupid hat as well, and I've got to unmute him to see why he's wearing a hat. He doesn't explain it; it's just there.
Do you think Justin Langer is as bad as him? Because they're both pretty bad.
Yeah, thank God they're almost never on together. What a nightmare that would be.
Well, they will be this
My
summer
little
for Channel
mate,
7.
my big mate. Oh, bloody hell.
What do you think, Jono?
Oh, it's a shame Ricky Ponting's won out in the Channel 7 box with those two next to him. But no, it's there's some big personalities. I mean, Ravi Shastri is out. He is calling the first test of the summer for Fox Cricket, which we fantastic. He might have flicked Ishiguro on to do the toss because everyone knows how much Ravi Shastri loves commentating a coin toss. Which will be very interesting for the 5 people in Perth that maybe go to see it. It will be interesting. Plenty of good commentators, plenty of bad commentators everywhere you look. It's just about finding the right mix. Sometimes I find myself bouncing around a little bit and making sure you can listen to the right people and opinions that you like, which is a little bit of fun and a little bit of bouncing around.
Yeah, I tend to mute a lot of the commentary at the moment. Both networks, all commentary. But yeah, Hayden's just rough. Hayden is very rough. All right, we're going to take a break in a moment, and then we'll be back to talk about the farce at the BBL and we can't let it go. But I do. So Dan, we've got you on the show, and look, you've done a podcast to us, so most people would know about your book, 100 Funniest Moments in Australian Cricket. Now, I have to say, your books just click with me. Like your World Cup book's amazing. This is incredible. The perfect coffee table book for a cricket fan. What are some of the standout funniest moments for you from this 100 funniest moments?
Oh, I mean, there's so many, but I do, as you well know.
Let's go through all 100. Let's go through all 100. Let's go. Bang.
Yeah, let's count them all down. Yeah, I do have a massive soft spot for Watto. Watto and his giant front pad is always one that I just love. Love the entire 1, 2, 3 punch. Front pad, LBW out. Nah, I'm going to review it. Nah, you're still out. Sad, trudging off. Like that, everything about that is perfect. That's absolutely magnificent. I can't ignore Glenn Maxwell leaving a ball that crashes into his middle stump and everything associated with Glenn Maxwell as well. But yeah,
it's nearly the 10-year anniversary of that.
I do like in Elise Perry bringing up what she thinks is a 200, celebrating wildly, then being told, actually, that's not a double century. The ball bounced inside the rope and just as sheepishly retracted and then give a half-hearted celebration when she actually gets to the 200. So there's lots of great moments. But yeah, plenty, like 97 more in the book than what I've just mentioned.
You often see the funny side to cricket. You know, Cricket Unfiltered is very serious, but you see the funny side to cricket. You and Kat, your podcast, the book. You know, you seem to have a real flair for looking for the elements in cricket that are funny.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't take it serious. Such a wonderful sport seriously because there are so many amazingly funny things that happen. I'm not sure I can. I can't even think of the last time I actually cared about the more serious moments because every time you try, like something absurd comes along. Like you're watching the World Cup, then all of a sudden, you know, Angelo Matthews is being timed out because his helmet strap doesn't work. It's just like, well, come on, this is brilliant.
That's why we love the game.
World Cup, it's fantastic.
But it's a great book and it's very well researched. You'll learn a lot. You'll have a good time. I don't mean it's like insulting. It's also the perfect like book to have in the dunny. Like just pick it up and flick through some of the funniest moments. So highly recommend it.
You can read one in time easily. Read one or two. I mean, it depends how much.
Keep going,
Finding
Dan.
you've got in your system.
Keep going. Johnny, you said before we get on, you've got a few of Dan's books, so I thoroughly recommend this one. It's a great read, and I'm not just saying that because you're on the podcast. I mean, I've got yours next to Gideon Hayes' latest book, and one of the books is one of the books is getting more of a read than the other, and you can guess which one. All right, we're going to take our final break. Then we'll be back to talk about the absolute farce that was the BBL down in Geelong. And if Dan was writing 101 funniest moments in Australian cricket, I think this might get there. All right, welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. We've gone through all the men's and women's cricket news. Now it's time to get into the Big Bash. I'm Manners, I'm with Dan and Jono, and we had an absolute disgraceful scene happen on Sunday night at Geelong Stadium. The game between the Melbourne Renegades and the Perth Scorchers started, but it had to be abandoned because the pitch was unfit for play. The reason it was unfit for play was that the covers had leaked, and so there was a lot of water on the good length at one end of the pitch. So absolutely unfit for play. At the toss, Nick Maddinson said it was drenched. And I mean, John, I'll start with you. This is an absolute disgrace. They had one pitch at Cardinia Park to cover. They have one Big Bash game there this summer. They have 2 TV networks there. It's the start of the tournament, and they effed up.
Yeah, it hasn't been the greatest start for the Big Bash men, as we were talking about it. Sans the game in Sydney on Friday night, there's been a blowout and a washout, and one game that had to get called off for an unsafe pitch. So how else is BBL going? But it's not good. Like, we love teams taking BBL to the regions. The Sixers take a game to Coffs Harbour. The Heat go down the road to the Gold Coast and up the road to Mackay. So it's great for those communities, and it's such a shame. And as you said, just if you know it's going to rain, and you know it's going to rain a lot the day before, get more covers in. Like, you put more effort into covering a grade cricket ground with some cinder blocks and maybe some extra covers and double covers, and it's not that hard. I just think, and I think Michael Vaughan touched on this after the game, and we'll get your boys' thoughts on it. I just think,
thanks, Jono.
So often cricket doesn't help itself in these situations. Like, knowing that it's going to rain, or knowing that there's going to be bad light, but there might be more rain coming, so we can't play yet, even though we might get a chance to fit some play in. There are so many situations, and this is just another one, where cricket actually doesn't help itself. And you can put this down to human error. You can put it down to not reading the weather. And it's just like, yeah, fair enough. You can't plan for rain that you don't know is coming. But if you know that it was going to absolutely piss down the day before, as it did in Melbourne, didn't stop raining all day, but you've got a game in Geelong, which is your one game for the year. The crowd's going to come out. People are going to travel down the highway to come and see it. Just do better. It's embarrassing for the league. It's embarrassing for the Renegades, who now not forfeit a game, but they lose valuable points, and they're already one game down. And
Cardinia Park might never get another BBL game after this. I mean, it could completely torpedo their chances of holding more games. And just on the points, I actually think the Renegades should forfeit the points. I don't think the Scorchers should be forced to just get 1 point, because that could rule them out of the finals. The Renegades are the home team. It's onus is on them to provide a pitch that's safe for play, and they should be docked the points. I know there's some talk they might try and reschedule the game, but it could be difficult to fit it in. But I think actually the Scorchers should get the 2 points.
That's the same as, remember when the Heat, the power went out at the Gabba, and the Heat basically was saved. They were in big trouble that night. And yeah, I mean, the Heat shared the points, and I think that was just declared whatever it was, a shared result. But yeah, I do wonder, as with all these things, I think when it's something like that, I think there's definitely a case for the home side to lose their points. But as with all these things, kind of the interesting thing is kind of at the boundaries between when do you lose your points and when is it, Duckworth Lewis or shared. So if the rain starts to come, are they going to be shot clocks on the groundsmen to get out there and put the covers on? And if they're too slow, it's just like, nah, you've lost your
They
point.
might need it.
So I think that makes it more interesting. So let's get that involved.
Oh, well, the late great Shane Warne used to love the races between the groundsmen at the SCG to see who could get from the boundary line out to the covers first to take them off. So maybe just incentivize them. Ground staff of the year, get that at the Australian Cricket Awards.
Yeah, they're part of the squad now. They've got to train. They've got to get ready to go. Like, they get a medal at the end of the year if they've done
the
their
tracksuits.
It's their big night. It's their big night. Who's got the best pitch and the best team in the world?
I do think, though, there might be now cause for an actual role at Cricket Australia that is to oversee the general ground and pitch preparation across the country, because there obviously is not enough oversight. So this happened at Cardinia Park. The PM's 11 game was called off because the covers weren't put on properly. You had a pitch in Sydney where 24 wickets fell in one day. Maybe it's time that there is actually someone employed to go on and do the checks and balances and make sure these things don't happen. Check the equipment, check the covers, check the ground staff, make sure they know what they're doing. And I have a lot of sympathy for the ground staff. It's easy for us to take pot shots at them, but, give them some more resources to do a better job. Because, as I said, if Australia was touring somewhere and we were seeing this sort of stuff happen, we would go, this is a joke. Whereas it's happening in our own backyard, and something needs to be done about it. All right. Staying on the Big Bash, so the Sixers have won 2 in a row, so they're the top of the table. Some news, though, that's interesting. The way the schedule is lining up, if the Adelaide Strikers start hosting finals matches because of the West Indies test, it looks like the Adelaide Strikers will have to play their finals game away at an opposition team's home venue, because there's no other ground in South Australia that's fit for a BBL game. So even if Adelaide finish in the top 2, they might not actually get the right to play at home because it'll clash with the test against the West Indies. And also for the Brisbane Heat, if they host the grand final, it won't be at the Gabba because that's where the test match is. It might be at Metricon Stadium, which is okay, I guess. But it's interesting that Adelaide and, they talk about finishing the top 2, earning the right to host finals, but Adelaide and the Heat might not get that.
Maybe Adelaide can just duck over to Cardinia Park, have their match there.
Or can't they just go down the road and play it at Karen Rolton Oval?
Yeah.
Well, apparently not. Apparently that's not fit
300.
for. Yeah, Jake Fraser McGurk could like that, but apparently that's not fit for BBL matches. So
I was going to say, if you're talking about pitches, the state of the pitch at Karen Rolton, the Karen Rolton Highway.
Yeah, a lot of runs scored. The interesting thing about it is that this has not been publicised by Cricket Australia. So it'd be interesting to see when they actually release this information that those two teams might not get.
I think they're just assuming they won't make the finals.
Well, you could say that with the Brisbane Heat, but the Strikers look like they've got a pretty good team.
Yeah.
But overall, look, the Big Bash has just started. As you said, Jono, it's been a flat start, but still there's a couple more games. Then they break for the first test, which is kind of weird in itself that they're taking sort of losing that momentum for 5 days. I almost feel like they should have played this first test match, and sorry to the people out west, they should have played this test match at the Gabba during the day and kept the Big Bash at night. But I know that surely the WACA and the West Test have been lobbying very hard for this first test, but it is going to just halt the Big Bash. So don't get too excited about the Big Bash because it's stopping for 5 days.
I mean, the Big Bash never really gets going till after Christmas anyway, right? It's these first few rounds are just like people are only half watching until the Christmas holidays begin, and then it's like, all right, oh yeah, that's all right, it's on now, and then they get serious about it. Well,
There's quite a
as
good
serious as
crowd.
anybody gets about the Big Bash.
Yeah, there was quite a good crowd for the Sixers game against the Gades. Over 13,000 people there, which is pretty good for a pre-Christmas game in Sydney. All right, that is all the cricket news. Now it's time to wrap it up with Can't Let It Go, which is that little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Dan, because you're our guest today, author of 100 Funniest Moments in Australian Cricket, what is your Can't Let It Go?
My Can't Let It Go is England losing to the West Indies in the ODI series. So after their stinking up the place effort in the World Cup, they decided, well, we didn't get a chance to lose to the West Indies. So over they head there, lost to them 2-1. And it's just lovely to see England out there having a go, playing the 50-over game. I think it's lovely. Good exercise for them. They're never going to win, but they have to have fun.
That's nice to see a minnow doing well. Yeah. I said to Michael Vaughan, I asked him if England's white ball team was in a rebuild, and he emphatically denied it. Well, shows how much he knows. That was a spanking. I don't think they've lost a one-day series in the West Indies for like 20 years. So
yeah, it was the first time in the 21st century they'd lost one. So yeah.
Jono, what's your Can't Let It Go?
Well, my Can't Let It Go is we're heading off to Bangladesh for my Can't Let It Go, and
interesting.
I think if you do a volume 2 of your funniest moments in cricket, Dad, this one might get a run. But it's wild to me that in the year of 2023, we've had Bazball, we've had shit pitches, we've had pitch doctoring, we've had Australia winning a World Cup, we've had billions of Indians' hearts broken, and we've had a batter being timed out for a busted helmet strap, and we've also had a batter being given out, handled the ball, which is absolutely wild. But the funniest part to me about this, and I've watched it back a couple of times, the ball was nowhere near the stumps. I don't know what Mushfiqur was doing. It was just patting it away, but the ball was in no danger of actually rolling back onto his stumps. I had no idea what he was doing.
Didn't he do it twice? He tried to do it once and missed it.
He flashed at one earlier and didn't actually hit it. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his brain. But there was definitely no reason to punch away the one he did.
Yeah. The even wilder thing about it, Shakib Al Hassan wasn't even playing. So you were thinking, well, it might be a Bangladesh team shenanigan free, but absolutely not. It's just been a wild 6 weeks for cricket dismissals, and it makes me wonder that maybe the BBL started in a not so much of a blaze of glory. We might see the funniest dismissal ever coming up in the Big Bash.
It's going to be hard to top that timed out from the World Cup. And I was calling for a national holiday. I thought all cricket fans should have been given the next day off work after that timed out.
Yeah, we literally get a timeout, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. See, that's why he's a writer. That sort of material. All right, I've got sort of 2 Can't Let It Goes. First one is very quickly. I don't know if you two saw, but they wheeled out Justin Langer to promote the Western Test. So they brought him out in a cowboy hat and a lasso, and he was there to try and bring in the crowds and tell them that, oh, no, this Australian team's all right. You've got to put it behind you. Let's come out and support the boys. I thought that was classic Western Australian shenanigans to wheel out the little fella.
Yes.
And my final...
I don't know. I don't pretend to understand why they're still so upset about that, but whatever. They clearly are. Hopefully,
I'm upset about it. I totally understand. They literally stabbed in the back one of Australian cricket's greatest ever players and coaches. Oh. Well, I think they literally did. Literally, there were knives in his back.
Awesome. Well, that's the big story. That's the story that headlines this podcast.
And the other Can't Let It Go is I'm still, and I don't know if we talked about it enough on this podcast, but the deal for Cricket World Cups in Australia to go to Amazon Prime. It's just a huge shift in the broadcast landscape, and I've been thinking about this a lot. And I do think that it will maybe cost viewers because I think it's so easy for people to turn on free-to-air TV and watch the World Cup. But I also think there is, like, I know my kids don't know what free-to-air TV is. Like, honestly, if I tried to explain to them what free-to-air TV is, I don't think they'd get it. They would just end up downloading like the 9 app and streaming it. So maybe being on Amazon Prime will take the cricket to a new market.
Well, Amazon Prime's a lot cheaper than KO. I'll tell you that. It's decent value. So if you really want to watch the World Cup and you have to get some app and you want to watch a decent amount of it, I think Amazon Prime's a better option than KO.
It's the classic conundrum that broadcasters and sporting administrators are being caught up in at the moment. They're chasing the dollars and the eyeballs, which is more and more they're going to be on these streaming services. Different codes have tried it, some successful, some not. It's just another hurdle for the cricket loving public. As you said, Menas, your kids might not know what free-to-air TV is. I grew up with all the cricket on free-to-air TV, and now if you want to watch whenever they played, rarely, an Australian one-day game played in Australia, you have to jump on KO and get it behind a paywall. So while there is the threat of losing the audience of the casual fans, I think it's really just appealing to one, where this whole space and world's going, and also if you love your cricket enough, you'll sign up and get it.
And look, Amazon Prime, if you're going to go with one of the apps, as you say, it's one of the more affordable ones, Dan, but it's also one of the biggest. Like most people, one of the more established. They're not going on like Paramount Plus or some stupid app that no one's heard of. So. And Amazon have deep pockets, so hopefully they can just fund a lot of cricket. Maybe, this money can go towards someone to oversee the covers in Australia. Maybe the extra cash that they get from Amazon.
Yeah. If the ground staff have Amazon Prime, they can get free shipping on new covers. So, yeah, fantastic.
Well, apparently Amazon did this thing in the NFL where while you were watching, they were putting up QR codes and you could just scan your phone and buy something. So they could actually put up the QR code for the covers and the grounds.
Yep.
Order those. All right, guys. Well, that is it for Cricket Unfiltered this week. Dan, thanks so much for jumping on. Where can the listeners find you? Where can they get your book?
Okay, well, you can follow me on pretty much any social media platform by looking for Lieb Cricket. That's LIEB Cricket. Or go to liebcricket.com, and that's also where you can get a copy of the book, or you just wander into any bookstore in Australia. It should be there on a shelf, probably in the sports section, ideally. Go over there, pick it up, and send me some money, please. And enjoy reading it as well, but mostly send me some money.
I noticed that Malcon, a journalist for SMH, said he was leaving Twitter because Alex Jones was allowed back on. Are you still on Twitter, Dan?
I'm still on Twitter, but I'm everywhere else as well. So I'm just I'm biding my time, trying to work out, because Twitter is going to die soon. I'm just seeing what's going to come up next. So
everyone
I'm
says
everywhere.
It's going to die soon, but it really, I don't think it is going to die soon. I think it's going to keep on keeping on Twitter, and
it's like a cat with 9 lives. It just every time it says it's going to die, it just miraculously comes back.
That sort of toxicity has a long shelf life. So the hate on Twitter will keep it going. And I get why someone might be upset that Alex Jones has leapt back on Twitter, but also he just said some stupid things. He didn't actually kill those kids. So I think we're getting going a bit crazy. Jono, where can the listeners find you? What's new? You got any books out?
I do not have any books out.
Pathetic.
Not give us a couple of years and we might do something. But no, you can find me on Twitter at Jono Baruch. That's JONOBARUCH. I'm on Fox Sports. I have been at Inner Sanctum, so you can catch me around. I'll be around a few of the test matches, so looking forward to doing some stuff over there. So I like test match.
Just wrap it up. Jono, also we're going to catch up during the first test and do some daily wraps because I think we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the first test goes doing the daily wraps. If Pakistan are just friggin' hopeless, maybe we'll abort the daily wraps if they become just Australian gloating for 3 weeks.
So come on, Pakistan, be good, please.
Yes, be competitive, please, for the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, listeners. Thanks so much for listening, Donna.